Hi, and welcome to David Essel Alive, helping Americans heal, the most positive podcast in this galaxy, and others as well. David Essel in the box with you. 43 years in the world of personal growth, 35 years as a top podcaster, radio host, television host, #1 best-selling author, so many more things. And how can you write a book in 48 hours? Is it even possible? Oh my gosh, when you read about people writing books, and I know my first book, Phoenix Soul, One Man's Search for Love and Inner Peace, took me about 1.5 years to write. And then since then, I've got it down, and I'm going to tell you the answer already to the question, is it possible to write a book in 48 hours? The last 4 books or 5 books, I forget now, I have written in 48 hours. I have written the last 4 to 5 of our books. We have 13 out right now in 48 hours. It is amazing. It is so joyful. Can you imagine how excited you would be if at the end of a Saturday and Sunday of putting a book down that it was completed? All it needed to do was be edited. Of course, you have to have a cover design and all that kind of stuff, but I'm talking about the guts of the book. You can write the guts of a book in 48 hours, and I'm going to tell you how to do it. It is so joyful. At the end of a Saturday and Sunday, especially Sunday evening, when I've written a book and it is done and it's in the hands of an editor, I am ecstatic. I just cannot wait to get the next book out there. I'm being very serious. In the last, I'm going to say, I think 1.5 or 2 years, we've written 3 or 4 books. I mean, they're just flying out of us. So here we go. Grab your pen and paper. If you want to learn how to write a book in 48 hours, I'm going to give you the outline right now. Number 1, write a killer outline. I'll take anywhere from maybe 30 days, 10 minutes a day at the most, maybe 15 minutes a day for 30 days, and I'll start to write down what my outline's going to look like. So I'll have a working title, right? The working title, one of the books and the subtitle of this podcast, Helping Americans Heal, the ultimate guide to healing during these challenging times. So I wrote that down first as the working title. We could have changed it. We ended up not. We could have changed it to 1,000 different types of words and statements and sentences, but I happened to write down a working title and it worked. That's step number 1. Number 2, we write down 10 chapter outlines. In other words, 10 chapter titles. So when I did Helping Americans Heal, chapter 1 is going to be this, chapter 2 is this, chapter 3 is that. And we start to look at what do we want in these chapters. Now, in Helping Americans Heal, we had 5 or 6 different topics that we wanted to write about. So we did that book a little differently than what I normally did. But we said, okay, in chapter 1 or section 1, we're going to have an article that's going to be on addiction, an article that's going to be on relationships, an article that's going to be on PTSD, an article that's going to be on whatever. And then that became section 1. So I'd write down, okay, we're going to write about PTSD. So I'd write down PTSD. Then I'd write down, define it. Then I'd write down, tell a story of a client with PTSD you helped. Then I would write down, put a study in talking about PTSD is not just for the military anymore. Because of COVID and everything else that's going on, there are so many people struggling with PTSD and they don't even know it. Post-traumatic stress disorder is what PTSD stands for. And for the longest period of time, we thought it was all military related. Now we're finding out that people can get PTSD by going through some massive life changes. Like at the same time, in the book, I write about one of my clients that lost her job. Her husband filed for divorce. She lost her 2 dogs, and then she ended up losing her home all in 1 year. She was in full-blown PTSD. So you see, we write stories and studies and statistics, as many as we can. Now we're talking nonfiction here, nonfiction books. That's about all I write. Nonfiction means reality. So we write books on personal growth. So let me go back again. Choose a working title. This is to write a book in 48 hours. Choose your writing title. Come up with your 10 chapter titles. Underneath each of the 10 chapter titles, put down stories, studies, statistics. Maybe you're going to write a little bit about yourself. I have a notion I'm going to give you in a few minutes about that. Mainly, you want to bring in other individual stories versus your own. So you've got all of this together. Now, this takes me about 30 days to write a really strong outline. Once you have it down, here's the easy part: writing the book. The hard part is making sure the outline is so solid, so tight, that all you have to do is grab a piece of paper and look at it and say, okay, chapter 1, I'm going to use these 4 stories, I'm going to use these 2 statistics, and I'm done with chapter 1. And I go for it. So I will hold my phone. Now, I don't type. I'm a terrible typist. I used to write all of my books longhand. It would take a long time. I would have legal pads filled with my books. I would hand it to one of my assistants who would then put it in a Word document. I don't do that anymore. Now I have my iPhone. I pull up an email. I hit the little speaker button and I am off to the races. It's super easy. I have my outline in front of me. I know that I'm going to go from this story on PTSD to this statistic on PTSD to this solution on PTSD. The chapter's done. You can do this so effortlessly. And at the end of 2 days, I spend about 10 hours a day, 10 hours on a Saturday, 10 hours on a Sunday recording. Then I go through and I do my own little simple edit, right? So I have an email that's chapter 1, and I'll just look for the most blatant mistakes that I've made in it. Then I send it to one of my assistants who puts it in a Word doc, does the Grammarly work, does the spell check work, and then it goes to another person who does also another spell check, another grammar check before we upload it to Amazon. The greatest news I can give you right now is that so many people make the mistake of wanting to sit down and write a book and they don't have a solid outline. That's where writer's block comes into play. That's why it took me a year and a half to write my first book. That's why it took me a year to write my second book and probably another year to write my third book until I understood that there's an easier way. And when I started putting more time into the outlines, now there are a couple books that were just gifts, miracles. I didn't have an outline. I wrote an entire book, but I don't advise that because that's where we run into the writer's block. That's where we run into God. Chapter 1, 2, and 3 went so well, but what do I do with 4? I'm lost. I'm stuck. I don't have a study. I don't have a story. I don't have a statistic, and that holds us back. So follow this simple outline I just gave you, and you too can learn how to write a book in 2 days, 48 hours. You can take 30 days to write that outline out, but then it's time to rock and roll. And if you want to work with me on how you can get this book done in 48 hours, I'll work with you. I'll talk to you. I'll take you through it. And you can even get a 20-minute free discovery call. Go to talkdavid.com. If you want to learn how to write a book in 2 days, or maybe for you it'll be 3 days, but I'm talking about in a tiny short period of time, go to talkdavid.com, sign up for a free discovery call. Let's jump on the phone together. And I can help you get started so you don't waste time. I look at my first couple books, and of course they're learning experiences, and I had a lot to learn. And I look now 25 years later and I shake my head and say, oh my gosh, here's where I can help millions of people bypass the struggle and the stress and the strife that I went through early in my writing career because I had no idea that if you did it the way that I created, you could write a complete book in 48 hours. Then it'll go through a series of editing processes and you're going to have to do cover design and all that kind of stuff. But the guts of the book, 90% of the book can be done in 48 hours. Go to talkdavid.com, sign up for the free discovery call, and you can actually download right there 3 of our top selling books absolutely free. Read them and go, God, this guy did this in 48 hours? And the answer is yes. He did this one in 48 hours? The answer is yes. He did this other? Yes, yes, and yes. I've done them all in 48 hours. I want you to have the same success. It's a blast. Being a published author is awesome. And everyone in this world has at least one, if not more, books inside them ready to burst out and make a difference in the lives of others. So reach out to me at talkdavid.com. And remember, you're listening to the most positive podcast in this galaxy, David Essel Alive, helping Americans and the world to heal on Buzzsprout.com. And the whole point of these podcasts is one thing. It's all about good news with David Essel. I look forward to connecting with you soon. Have an amazing day.